How are the words we choose connected to who we are? Today we're diving into this really powerful link between our language and our identity, and we'll see how modern sociolinguistics has just completely flipped the script on how we think about this. Seriously, just think about it for a second. You're on a call with, say, a professor or your boss, and you're using your formal professional voice. Then your best friend calls. In that split second, your pitch changes, your vocabulary changes, your entire way of speaking is different. Why? You didn't just become a totally different person, or did you? Well, that little switch holds the key to everything we're about to unpack.
So to really understand what's happening on that phone call, we've got to ask a much bigger question about identity itself. Is it some kind of fixed box that defines us, or is it more like something we're constantly performing?
Okay, so historically, the old way of looking at this was through a lens called essentialism. The idea was pretty simple. Your identity, your age, your social class, whatever, was a fixed box. If you were in box A, well, you spoke in style A. That's it. But then this radical new idea came along, social constructionism. And this view sees identity not as a box you're just put in, but as something you actively build through social interaction. Now, this is the crucial part. It means language doesn't just reflect who you are, it's the very tool you use to create who you are.
And this visual just perfectly illustrates that difference, doesn't it? On the left, you've got the old view, people just sorted into these demographic boxes, and their speech is just a product of that. But on the right, you see a much more dynamic and, frankly, a much more accurate reality. People as active builders, using language to construct who they are in real time.
So this brings us to this really cool concept of acts of identity. Basically, every single time we open our mouths, we're making these tiny strategic choices. We pick certain words or a specific tone to project a certain persona. And we do this either to align ourselves with a group, what linguists call a community of practice, or to consciously distance ourselves from one.
Let's look at a classic study that shows this in action. Researcher Mary Bucholtz wanted to see how teenagers use language to push back against the cool kids. So she studied this group of high school girls who proudly called themselves nerds. And what she found was absolutely fascinating. It wasn't just that they dressed differently, they spoke differently. They consciously avoided all the popular slang and instead used what she called superstandard English. We're talking very formal words and super precise pronunciation. This was no accident. It was a strategic linguistic choice to perform an intellectual identity and create a clear boundary between them and the mainstream.
Okay, so if we're all performers, then what's in our identity toolkit? How do we juggle all the different roles we play every single day? Let's take a look at the tools we all use to build ourselves.
Topomony gives us this fantastic framework. He says, look, we need to ditch the myth of having one single stable identity. It's just not true. Instead, we all have a whole cluster of identities. You might be a teacher, a parent, a researcher, and a collaborator all at the same time. But here's the thing, they aren't all active at once. They're arranged in this dynamic hierarchy, and the social context of the moment is what pushes one of them right to the top.
And right here, we can see that hierarchy in action. In the classroom, the authoritative educator identity is the most important one. It's what we call salient identity. The language is formal, it's direct. But then, jump on a call with international partners, and that identity slides way down. Suddenly, the transnational collaborator identity shoots to the top, and boom, the language instantly shifts to be more cooperative and flexible. It's the exact same person, but the context totally dictates which identity is running the show.
All right, so we get that our identities shift, but how do we actually make that happen? This is where a really powerful analogy from Nicholas Coupland comes in. He suggests that our linguistic style is an assemblage of design choices. What does that mean? In essence, we are all linguistic architects. And this analogy just makes it crystal clear. Think about it. An architect carefully selects wood and stone and glass to design a house for a specific purpose. Well, in the exact same way, a speaker selects an accent, certain vocabulary, maybe some slang, to design a social identity that fits the moment, whether that's to signal academic credibility or to build solidarity with a team.
Now, this all might sound pretty theoretical, but it has massive real-world implications, especially for anyone who's learning or teaching a language like English.
So a researcher named David Block took a hard look at global English textbooks, and he found that they often push a really narrow identity onto students. They tend to present the ideal English learner as this kind of cosmopolitan person, a global tourist who uses English mostly for shopping and travel. The language gets treated like a commodity, just a tool for simple transactions.
And the disconnect here is huge.
The reality for so many students, like you see on the left, is collaborating on really complex international projects. But the textbook world on the right often prepares them for little more than just ordering a coffee. In real-world situations, you need to navigate cultural friction. You need to build rapport. You're not just performing a simple transaction. The textbook identity just doesn't cut it.
Martin Fouché's research really backs this up. He studied French and Finnish professionals working together, and he found that true cross-cultural communication isn't about memorizing polite phrases. No, it's a deep psychological shift. When their core cultural values clashed, it challenged their very sense of self. But, and this is the key, by navigating that friction, they were able to build a new, flexible third space, a kind of hybrid intercultural identity. And really, that is the goal of language learning.
So let's bring all of this together. This idea that you are what you speak, well, it's a lot more literal than we probably ever thought.
So what are the big takeaways here? First, identity isn't some static thing you just have. It's an active performance. It's something you do. Second, we do this by making linguistic choices, all managed through that flexible hierarchy where context is king. And finally, always remember that you are an architect, and you're using language as the building material to construct who you want to be in any given moment.
When you think about it, this understanding gives us incredible agency. It means our words aren't just dictated by our background, they are a powerful tool for self-creation. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. The next time you open your mouth to speak, who will you decide to be?